Well, my name's Ernest Jeffrey. I'm better known as Jeff. And I was born in Front Street, Ledgate, actually. And I worked there for 50 years in Ledgate. That's funny enough as well. Lived all my life in Ledgate, barring a little stint in Templetown. Just a normal childhood, like anybody else. And oh well, my mum died when I was 11-year-old, and she suffered with diabetes, and so I was like sort of brought up with my grandmother and my granny, as we called them in them days, and then my father remarried and brought us back together again because my brother was getting brought up with me auntie, and all his life he worked at the steelworks doing something. And an uncle, most people around here worked there anyway, and the pits. They were just called blast furnacemen, you know, like they had the big wheel, like iron barrows, and with huge wheels and very heavy before they put the iron ore in to take up to the furnaces. How they lifted them, I don't know. That's maybe why they were heavily built, and they worked out in all weathers. You know, it was an open air job. Got a job at 14, shoe repair, an apprentice shoe repairer at Stanley. Started work at 14. You didn't get no holidays in them days. You just, as soon as it was your birthday, if you got a job, you just went to work. I can always remember having to start at 7:30 in the morning and having to go to Stanley. And I've always been a bad getter up. I always missed the bus. And you worked till you were 5:30. That was about, in 6 days a week. I can always remember I had to be a best man for my next door neighbour. He was getting married, and I only got a half a day's off work for it to go there. I can always remember my first wage was 16 and 8 pence. Remember that, and I got half a crown pocket money. I thought I was quids in. Then your 18th birthday, you got national service in them days. Yeah, I was all over and ended up in Palestine for a while, and I was in the airborne, Paris. I was in the REMI at first, the Royal Electrical Mechanical Engineers. I don't think they knew what to do with us when I was a shoe repairer, and I was what they call a coach trimmer. I used to make the canvas things, what you see on all the trucks and whatever and things like that. Then I was up in Glasgow, a place called Bishop Briggs, terrible place. The barracks was anyway. Then they come round wanting volunteers for to go into the parachute regiment. So the whole hut volunteered.
To get out of Glasgow?
To get out of that place. Bishop Briggs anyway. But there was only about 3 of us got through. I left when I come out of the army and done my national service, and you weren't making, I thought I could do as much, and so me and a friend of mine we started up together in Ledgate in 1949, like I've said before. I think it was November the 6th, if I can remember rightly. November anyway. And we just carried on from there. Then we built a business up. Then my friend, with my partner, he went and started away at concert, and then he moved and whatever, and I just stopped at Ledgate all my life because I was born on Front Street. I worked on Front Street, and I'm forgetting about that. I was born on Front Street as well. So I've got big ties with Ledgate.
Yeah.
Oh, and I'm a member of Ledgate Club. I've been a member since I'm the oldest serving member in Ledgate Club, I've been told anyway. I don't know, but that's what I've been told. Not the oldest member, but I'm the oldest serving member, about 50 odd years. I'm not a boozer though, but I like a pint of beer and a bit crack. My brother got a job when he was apprentice draftsman at Templetown, then they moved over to the main works later on. But the day of the accident was, well, obviously it was a Saturday night, and we got to know, I don't really exactly know how we got to know it. It was all like going around the district at the time that there was a big accident or a big disaster going on at the company, and my father was on 10 till 6. At the time there was the 3 shifts, 10 till 6, 6 till 2, and whatever. And with him going at 10 to 6, my brother was working at the company at the time, and he says, I better go up, lad, and see what's happening. Well, I says, you know more about the company than what I do, because I'd never worked there, and so I don't know how he got there, whether he cycled up or what, but I stopped with my sister and me mother, my stepmother, and like sort of comforted her because she was crying. My sister was only 7-year-old at the time, and just waited till we got word, and my brother come home and told us, I don't think he knew that my dad had died at the time, but he met an uncle of mine up there, my Uncle Joe, and he was walking about getting air because he'd been gassed at the particular time, and he says, I think you better go home, lad, to me brother. You know, the way they talked. He says, you better go home, Ted, he says, and we'll see things, what's happening in the morning, that, he says, but it doesn't look too good. So my brother come home then and told us all about, which I didn't really understand. Nobody understood at the time what was happening. But it was a big thing that everybody the next day was talking in like hushed tones, and, you know, oh, did you know this one had been killed, or that one had been killed, or that one, you know, the relations of this one. And because there was 2 or 3 people from maybe Castleside and Black Hill. It seemed to be all around the company. But everybody knew somebody who would, you know, died in it, and it went like wildfire around the district. But everybody knew somebody who had been killed in the disaster, or had a near miss, or whatever. Well, I would say maybe 6, 7 o'clock or something like that, before they confirmed who would. Well, I think it was like a cabin type place or something like that where the gas had escaped. I don't exactly know exactly, but it was an odorless gas. It was a thing nobody could tell. So I know that my dad had went in once and pulled somebody out. My dad was a very strong, muscular, you know. He was 46 at the time, and you'd be... Never mind, as far as I can gather anyway, he dragged one out, and he went back in for another one. Then I think he went back in for the 3rd one, but never come back out again. The gas was... Well, you didn't know it was there. I didn't know that he'd been there, that he could have gotten out if he hadn't gone back in again, and you just got to know that like on the grapevine later on and that, you know. But I always remember going to the mortuary. That was a thing which sticks in my mind forever, that like. It was a Shotley Bridge, and I had a distant relation, a relative went with us just to give us a bit of support, and I had to like identify my dad and things like that. But I can always remember the mortuary. It was, all the bodies was there, and they were like a tinge with green, like with the gas, I suppose it was. And but apart from the 11 men who had been killed and things like that, there was all the other bodies from the hospital. So you can imagine what it was like just walking into there and all the sheets. I'll never forget that as long as I live. You never got to know really what happened, but they must have given this certificate for something which come out later, which we didn't know about. This is a plaque from the Carnegie Foundation or whatever it was, and it's for a bravery award, which I'm quite proud of, and I'm pleased it's getting recognised. Somebody maybe it's done through the unions or something like that, you know, because the union men were, excuse me, the union men were pretty good at the time, you know, they were like sort of helping you and trying to get compensation, which didn't happen really, you know, you just was quite proud of them really, but it's sad as well at the time, but when I think back, like, he must have been a pretty brave, like, to do it. If that's the right word, I don't know, but if he was here now, he would probably not like that word, but you just help your fellow man, don't you? But when you think back at 11-year-old, when you lost your first mom, then apart from that, I lost my first child when she was 3 months old as well, you know, like, you know, so I'm quite used to losing people. But, you know, you don't talk about things like that. You just, that's life. I just love family life. I just, like Christmases and birthdays, I get spoiled. No, I don't. And I had a good wife. I was married for 62 years, was it? Mm-hmm. Yeah. I got 2 letters from the Queen. Yeah. So that speaks for itself. There's no. Then I've got a good family, and just. I think that's what it is. If you've got good family life, everything's okay. If you treat them right, they treat you right. Well, that's what happened when we were young, you know, when my mum died, and I thought I was brought up with me granny, as we called them in them days, and my brother was brought up with an aunt, and my dad was, they happened to go to work on shifts and things like that, and when he got married, we brought us back together again as a family. So my brother and me were very close, like, you know, and my sister was still close, you know, but never fall out or anything like that. I didn't really retire. I just knew a friend in Concert who was starting up. I helped him to start up, actually. I helped him to pick the threads up, because he lost his job at the company when the company closed, and he come to me and asked if he could pick the threads up, and I helped him. He was a competitor and all, but I helped him anyway. And never mind, when I retired, I just went up there just for the talk, and then you get involved, don't you? And I just love what I do. It's never mentioned when dates comes up and things like that, you know, you get mentioned about disasters at the pits and places like this, but it's very rarely that I've seen anything mentioned about the 11 men that was killed at Concert or died at Concert. And it's not right. Not to my mind, it's not right anyway. There should be some memory of some sort, you know. And I'm pleased this is happening.